Hey guys, it's Vince. Today in this video we are once again continuing with part 6 of my CNC controllers built incorrectly series, and this is all again based on what's openly available on YouTube so you guys can spot the knot. I don't want to waste any time because it seems like the more I post these videos, the more emails I get with more questions, so hopefully by watching the videos you guys will get the answers you need. Let's jump right in. Okay guys, you can see here we've got someone working on their system, and we actually see this quite a bit where we have cables going into a cable chain. Now I want you guys to look at the diameter of these cables, how many there are, going in probably a 2.5 to 3 inch wide cable chain. If your cable chain looks like this as far as its dimensions and width, and you are installing cables within it, you have to understand that you are at high risk of fracturing leads internally due to the fact that they are under stress. When we have the y-axis moving back and forth as it will do, it's going to continuously flex these cables. That's why I offer my DS Flexion, which is a cable that is designed to go inside of cable chains that are under strict confinement, because it's known as continuous flex cable with yarn separators to keep the leads from creating friction where they will internally fracture. Now what's really interesting as we go through the majority of this video is the fact that this end user has an amazing channel on electronics. Now mostly it's general electronics, and it's interesting that I say that because the end users that I usually talk to that claim to have electronic experience feel it carries over into this field, and that's not the case, guys. It just isn't. Okay, so keep that in mind. Seeing zip ties being used up here is one thing when the cables are not going to be in motion. When a cable is in motion, it does not behave as a stagnant cable. So keep that in mind. They are constantly moving with the robot, and therefore the casing and the structure of the cable has to be differently. Now, I do offer my double shielded spindle cables that are not designed for continuous flex. Henceforth, they're not rated for continuous flex, and that also drops the price of the cable. If you are extending it over the machine or you're mounting it externally, that would be best practice. Or going with a cable chain that's much wider, where you have a lot of space and there's no real stress on the cable from flexing. But you can see here that these cables are really under a lot of stress being put in such a small confined space. Natural expansion cannot happen with those cables, and what they're doing is they are just creating friction time and time again that this axis goes back and forth, and it's just a matter of time before you have premature failure. So keep that in mind. I'm going to play the video now to try to keep the audio as clean as possible.
Sorry. And the other two emergency stops, this is one of them, will probably go on the front sort of.
Now this is interesting that he brings up the emergency stop. I hear a lot of guys wanting to put external emergency stops on their system real close to the table. And I want to just draw you an image, so to speak, on the possibilities of just using your PC with a wireless keyboard would give you an emergency stop that you could carry around similar to a pendant. Why? Because the keyboard is wireless, and as long as you can see your computer screen, you can use the software to trigger an e-stop. Wiring in an external e-stop is still totally doable. It's not always applicable, and it does cost a lot more money than just using the appropriate software hardware configuration, which you're already going to use the right software because you need software for motion control. So keep that in mind. Ask the right questions. Once again, he may or may not know that, but again, crossing over into a different field means you're limited in the knowledge you have, and we see this time and time again. Anyone who's used Mach 3, UC CNC, or other motion control software realize the software itself has a reset button, a stop button, some type of integration where you click on it, and guess what? It kills the machine. So just keep that in mind, guys.
Signal cable here, multiple cores obviously, and again that just means we have the one cable going back to the machine, and there's 6 in total. I've already tied those together, as you can see there. And the deal with these things on the side is that these are flexible.
Okay guys, here's where things really start to take shape as far as the experience level and what we're seeing done. And you can see he has fans in here. His electronic experience is present because you can see how the wires are tied. things are starting to look cohesive except for big mistakes like this. We once again do not mount VFDs right near our drives. You can see he's got gecko drives right there, but that is not best practice. And it gets worse. And this is something I'm kind of shocked by with his experience on why he would do this, but it's something that really needs attention pointed out to it. I'm going to show you right now.
Inverter just here. This one is for the limits and the emergency stop. That will just go to the little board in the middle here, which is not yet installed. Comes across like that. And then the other 4 here are for the 7 motors, so one for each of the motors. And those will actually go to the individual drives here, so the X, Y, Z, and then the additional one for the Y axis as well. So here's the wires that come in the side of the cabinet, and I've just exposed a short section of the braid there, and then just put another piece of braid across all 6 of those, and then basically attached it to the nut on the back panel. So
guys, I don't know what I need to say about this. I don't know where he lives. I know it's probably the European Union, but I can tell you right now, this is a definitive no-no. We never, ever, ever want to splice cable and just attach a basic ground strap to the shield drain to ground this, because we're not terminating it properly. It's because he's using glands, which you can see here, without proper termination. He's trying to save work, is what he's trying to do. Once again, this is a large channel. This is not a guy that doesn't understand electronics. I have no idea why he would do something like this. I can definitely tell you in the States, if something like this is found, once again, and I've stated this time and time again in many videos, by possibly a fire marshal or any type of arson inspector, God forbid there's a fire in your facility or your house, whatever it may be, and they find this, you're going to have some serious issues getting paid. So keep in mind, do things the way that they're supposed to be done. If you're uncertain, ask. I can't believe he doesn't know that this would not be correct just looking at this. And to put this online with the amount of subs and the amount of research I'm assuming this gentleman has done is kind of frightening. I can't believe he needs content that bad. Anything is possible, but you look at this, and this is one of the worst ways to ground anything I've ever seen. And I'm saying that openly. I can't really believe what I'm seeing. But again, this is where a video really has to be seen, because when I tell guys I've seen some crazy things, they kind of laugh it off. Now I'm showing you what's openly online for us all to see. And there's no question here, these are glands. All he's doing is doing the cable pass-through, you can see from back here, all the way through, and then he wraps a ground strap to the tin braided copper that's surrounding the cable as its shield, and goes over and then just grounds it, he feels, to, you know, a ground plate on the chassis. So guys, do it right. Ground bus bar, use proper terminals here. Should be typically a 5-pin or a 4-pin. Most systems will use a 5-pin, 4 leads going to your bipolar stepper. The remaining lead is going to your shield drain, and that would be terminated to the ground bus bar mounted on the chassis. Okay, and I'll put a link to one of my systems there to show it to you done, so you guys can see how it goes.
Underneath here, and for this one I've just mounted it on this plate here, which is just a convenient location. Got a few blocks of plastic underneath just to raise the switch up to a suitable height. Cable comes in the back, and the cable we're using, which is this one here, is the same CY cable that we've used for pretty much everything else. Now for these we only need 2 cores, or 2 individual wires. Of course this has more than 2 in, but because we've got a whole roll.
Okay guys, let's think about this for a minute. There's a lot of confusion with this. I've answered this question numerous times. The thing to keep in mind is this: he's using a limit switch, home switch, whatever application you want to put your switch for. If you have 2 connections on your switch, which 99.9% do unless we're using proximity switches, you have to keep in mind that you need another terminal for your shield drain. If you do not have a terminal point to actually solder to for your shield drain, it makes the cable that's shielded ineffective at, once again, dissipating electrical noise. Now, when people say what he said online, and we see this used all the time, they are totally confused. So before I assume that he's confused, I want to show you what happens later in the video, because I think it's going to confirm exactly what I'm saying, and also make you guys realize how if you only watch a certain section of a video, you determine certain things, and by making those assumptions, you can actually basically shoot yourself in the foot. Many guys do that. So let's continue with this, and what I'm going to do is we're going to fast forward this video. We'll just come back just a little bit right here. Let's go from here.
Now this pair, which you've seen in previous episodes, that's for the external emergency.
Now, we can see right here that we have a shield drain not connected to anything. He's got a plastic junction box here. He has a terminal block here with multiple connections going to single point terminal blocks. Now just think about that for a minute. I've said this in previous videos. These junction boxes are fine to use as far as the plastic junction box to make everything neat. What is not fine to do is use a terminal block that's dedicated to supposedly one lead and put multiple leads in here. Now what's really scary about this are these are switches to either protect his system in one capacity or another for homing or whatever else, and he's doing this. So think about what we're doing when we're doing this stuff in great detail. And I say that because, like I just said from the previous portion of this video, if you only saw that spot, you say, hey, you know what? I only need 2-lead cable. I'm good. No, you don't. He didn't actually connect to grounds. You can see that here. Yielding his shielded cable that he's using because that's what he had left over, useless. It makes it just as good as standard cable. So even if you're using shielded cable, I see this a lot in videos where guys will say, oh, I'm using shielded cable, I'm good, even though they don't attach the ground to the cable. There's no dissipation for EMI. It makes the cable the exact same thing as you using speaker wire to hook up your system. So again, do things correctly. Be meticulous. This video has got a lot of questions for, once again, someone who's as involved in electronics as this individual.
Stop, which we'll do later, and then here is basically the interconnection for.
And you can see there is no confusion. This is exactly what he's doing here. Okay.
Various limit switches. So basically, it's a wire from the main controller comes in, goes into one, and then we've got a wire going out to, say, one of the switches, comes back to the next terminal, goes out to the next switch, comes back, goes, and so on. So basically got that continuous loop.
Yeah, he wanted to make a continuous loop, and the issue that they usually run into is they don't know how to do that by using a correct terminal splitter. I use them on my relays all the time, and those allow for ring connectors to be installed. I'll put it on the screen so you can see it. And then this way, you'll understand how to split this correctly, because this is not the correct way to do this. And again, the thing to keep in mind too is it takes more work to do it the correct way. We see that a lot. A lot of guys just want to get it done. They don't want to be working on their machine, you know, countless hours, and that's what happens. So thinking about that and looking at this, I really want you guys to pay close attention, because again, I want to reiterate this point. Switches are made to protect your machine, whether it be from doing a homing process or home crossover to limit switches, which I see a lot done. If these switches are not functioning correctly, or for some reason something comes loose or something is not making correct contact, henceforth doing what he did here by using 2 leads in one single terminal, you could definitely crash your system. There is no point to doing that. Do things right.
Now this box only has some of the connections in, because basically we've got here the wires coming in from the controller, one going to that limit switch we just saw, one for the other end of this axis.
Okay guys, something else I want to point out. We can see here that his spindle cable, of course, he made. I don't know if this is a double shielded cable. Judging from the internal electronics, I'm going to say it isn't. Just to reiterate, you want to use a double shielded cable, preferably, especially in this application where he has a cable chain, in a continuous flex format. So that would be my DS Flexion. You do not want to mount a standard cable to actually carry the power to your spindle. You're generating noise, and it will certainly give you issues, especially with switches mounted this close. I would never do that. I'm telling you right now, not best practice. You're asking for trouble. And once again, he did not reiterate what he's using. And that's something I want you guys to pay close attention to as well. If you notice that someone is describing what they're doing in these videos, and you see that a lot, they describe things, but they're not covering the details that would really make something stand out. And I really want you to pay close attention to what I'm saying. If you paint a car with a certain color paint or a certain brand of paint and that paint is different from the rest, you're usually going to call it out. When you see guys do the same repetitive thing and, oh, hey, I connected these leads to there or that lead to there, they stop right with that explanation. They never carry over into, hey, you know, I was using high wind rails. I wasn't just using rails, I was using high wind rails. This way you can really look at the quality of what they're trying to produce. So again, think about what you're looking at with these videos and be very conscious of how things are being worded and said. Remember, details are everything. And there is a lot of difference between wiring a spindle cable where you say it's done and saying it's been done with double shielded cable. Most guys, when they do their first soldering experience with double shielded cable, they want to pull their hair out. And I'm just telling you the facts. I don't care what experience they've had in the past. If you have not worked with double shielded cable, don't understand how to manipulate the tin braided copper or the mylar foil, the shield drain, it's a different experience. And believe you me, it is, especially when you're working with the internal cotton yarn separators. That's another different experience. Working with guys that deal with audio stuff, they get it a little bit until they work with the yarn, and then they're like, you know, this is usually a whole different ball game for them as well. So remember that. Always remember that guys tend to call out the things that will draw your attention to because it makes their system different. You will see that all the time. If they don't call it out, odds are there's nothing really different about it. I use 2 lead wire. Okay. I hook this up this way. Okay, they'll show you pictures. And again, I like videos for this in breaking it down in this format because it really does reflect. I'm being unbiased. I'm just showing you what other guys have posted online. You be the judge. You do your own homework. I'm just vocalizing what we know for a fact to be done incorrectly. Okay, guys, that wraps up the 6th part of this series. I hope you guys have all learned something. Again, questions I know will always be asked the longer the video is. If you have any, once again, you'll know my contact information is in the video's description. Get in touch with me. We can do a consultation. Whatever we need to do, we'll get it done. Thank you all for your support. Take care.